All right, gonna call up. This is time for my panel, right? All right, awesome. Everybody, come on up. So this is the evolving in-house KM function. So, lesson from corporate legal departments. We all like this stuff, right? Because these are actual clients of law firms, like they're not. So this is actually why they follow Michelle's keynote, because we thought it would be fun to bring living, breathing, non-law firm people up into a panel. Now, I'm going to let everyone introduce themselves, but understand that we have two folks from JPMorgan Chase. We have two people from Chevron. They're very different law departments at different places in their journey, and that's what makes this so interesting. So I'm going to let each of you introduce yourselves, and then we will jump into this conversation. Now, as we go, everybody, like I was going to sit, but I'm not going to because I cannot see the whole room if I'm doing that. So I'm just going to stand behind the chair so I can look at the panelists. But what that means is if you have questions, put your hand up. If I don't see you, wave your arms. And when you ask your question, for the love of God, please say your name, because it's possible I'm the only person here who knows you. So that's all. Who you are, where you're from, what your question is, wave your arms. Right, now let's get going. Manoj, please.
All right, sure. Manoj George, Chevron, Legal Operations Analyst. Been with Chevron now for 16 years. The last 15 have been in this great space between IT and law. A truly fun space, and been fortunate to be a part of a team that prioritizes knowledge management over the last 4 years for our 700 law function colleagues who are our clients.
Hi, I'm Dustin Jones, also with Chevron. My journey is a little different. Started at a law firm on the IT side about 20 years ago, and did that for about 15 years, and then got out of law entirely and came back in on the corporate law side working during an iManage rollout, which was about 5 years ago. And at that point, as I'm sure we'll talk about, we did not even have a knowledge management team. I don't think we knew what that was. And so we've sort of been evolving in those last 5 years. So a little bit different experience just coming from the law firm world and getting to see how different corporate law is.
Leslie Jordan. I'm with JPMorgan, and like you, Dustin, I say I grew up in law firms. And so I came to JPMorgan about 8 years ago. And when I stepped into JPMorgan, I thought, oh, I'm from the legal world, so this will be a breeze. Well, a year later, I felt like I was finally getting my feet solid. So I stepped into the role of KM librarian last year, and KM was already in operation live, but I think at that point we really saw the importance of focusing on strategic curation of content. So stepped into that role last year.
My name is Jamal Brown. I'm the head of legal operations and knowledge management. I've been with JPMorgan Chase for 4 years now. I manage a team that supports all 2,200 legal professionals at JPMorgan Chase, which includes our tech support team, onboarding, offboarding, legal research operations. And prior to my time at JPMorgan Chase, I was the head of e-discovery at CBS Broadcasting for 15 years. It's when I had hair. But I'm here at the firm now. Things are going well.
Okay, great. I think we need to kick off with a little bit of context then. So, Dustin, Manoj, you said 700?
700 colleagues.
700 clients. Now, Dustin, you said there was no KM at Chevron.
At least, formally.
Exactly. And this is what makes it interesting is, how did knowledge management begin to develop then in an organization so large and a corporation so enormous?
Yeah, I mean, I think we structurally had information services. We knew there was knowledge out there. We came in, or I came in when we obviously purchased the document management system, which everyone who had worked in a law function prior to coming to Chevron was so excited for. They thought, oh, now we're in the big time. We have, the system that we used in a different, and I worked at a law firm on.
Okay, so hey, I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second. All you law firm people out there, I want you to really digest that. There were lawyers at Chevron who after years said, God, I wish we had a document management system like we did at our law firm. Okay, just really think that. Okay, sorry. That's actually really important for them to hear. Okay, please go ahead.
Yeah, that's well, and then it was a little bit of a wake-up call.
Yeah.
So, obviously our first task was just to get the knowledge that lived everywhere else into this document management system, which, was spread out everywhere. So we had, obviously SharePoint was sort of the system of record for Chevron, the enterprise. Part of that was there, but then we, for the most part, very siloed in everyone's OneDrive. So just getting it out of, getting it to that. So that was our sort of first task. And then sort of also realizing that my experience at a law firm and how document management was set up was nothing like how corporate law was. So there was that realization right away that this was not going to be an easy one-to-one comparison.
Maybe I'll just add to it. We're a Microsoft shop, and when you're not using the enterprise product and you've got a new shiny toy, there's also questions about ROI now. And we get into this analysis of, well, how are people using our knowledge management tool? And that really forced us to sort of peel back the layers and kind of understand, okay, why are people not using our knowledge management tool? Why are people silo warriors? We're a large organization, and we've historically have everything in silos. So we had to sort of overcome that and understand. And so that's where we tried to figure out, wait, what is knowledge? What is knowledge for each law group, individuals, for the leaders? And we really started to get to work. And that's where we found our momentum with KM. Yeah.
That's great. Now, so over at JP Morgan, it's a little different. First, remind us again size of the legal group, legal ops. What's it look like at JP Morgan?
So we are 2,200 in our legal department, and I want to say there's probably 60% lawyers, and then the other 40% legal professionals. So, and it's interesting to hear Chevron's story because I think we have a different story to tell. So we had already gotten through the DMS world. People were in it, they understood it, they came from law firms, they were used to that. But we recognized, even though we had millions and millions of documents in this DMS, that wasn't really representative of knowledge in that it would provide value for us. So I think the first approach we took was really finding our experts. So we focused on people. So we started with people to people. So 2,200 wide individuals, if lawyer 1 needed to find out about lawyer 100, how did they do that? So we really focused on building a program that would help lawyers and legal staff get in and find one another and their expertise.
And you told us, as we were all getting to know each other, that knowledge management is actually a part of the strategic objectives of the department now?
Correct. Yeah. So our general counsel has named knowledge management one of the 6 strategic priorities of our legal department, and that's been helpful in adoption and engagement and having people support us along the way. So and with that, we have a set of senior management individuals from her management team that shepherds us through the work that we do over the year.
Okay, so just a question for the audience, a little bit of a show of hands. How many people here who are in knowledge management departments as a matter of course, not occasionally, but as a matter of course, could tell me if your clients, if your firm's largest clients have knowledge management departments? How many of you do that investigation? So Phil's got his hand partly up. Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because we kind of, this is going to take us into our next conversation. What we discovered as we were talking is that you've got silos internally, and then you're siloed from the KM professionals who have been at this for a year in the firms with which you work, which is really interesting. And so, I'm curious, again, to help us understand the organizations. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the cultural challenges and change management. So, Dustin and Manoj, you have this large organization, you are siloed. If people are not working in the document management system, My guess is that they're using the corporate systems. And so help us just understand a little bit more of that, and then how you have gone about establishing your value propositions for people who I'm going to guess have probably been working the same way independently for years without being asked to change.
True. For us, I would agree that technology is an enabler, but boy, is it about culture.
Yeah.
It takes thoughtful engagement from the leadership level on down, and where we've found sort of the traction around the cultural proposition is meeting with individuals by individuals, law group by law group, leadership, and frequently having these conversations. That's where the trust is built, and I think that's where we start to see the culture change. Large corporation, a diversity of storage options, people have worked with business partners who have their own systems of records that Dustin had mentioned. And we really had to go down to the level of each individual and ask, what is that piece of knowledge, or what is that thing that you're most worried about that lives in a silo that you constantly go after, and if you win the lottery, move on, that it sort of disappears, and we're having to reinvent or recreate that wheel. And if we didn't have those conversations down to the individual level, I don't think we would quite learn. And it's funny, you get one answer when you meet with the individual, and you get a different answer when you meet with the team. So it's important to meet down to the individual level to kind of understand what that is and understand what the pain point is. You listen to that, and then you go to leadership and say, hey, this is what we're hearing. Are you worried about these same things? Oftentimes they're surprised that they didn't hear this at a higher level. And then there's more to add that they're worried about. And they'll prioritize topics, people, others who may be on their way out, or certain expertise that are just staying with one person and not a group of individuals that they're really afraid of losing. We've gone through some significant changes this year, and this is where knowledge management really comes to light. And you understand, as people are organically or not departing, where important knowledge lives, and where the gaps are. So it's so important to meet down to that individual level, meet with everybody. My manager's here, Cindy, in the audience, and I think when we started this program about 3 years ago, she met with leadership and said, hey, this is what we want to do. We want to meet with each person down to the individual level. And they said, what are you going to do, take 2 years and talk to all 700 people? And if that's what it takes to change the culture, then yes, that's where the difference is made.
So it sounds to me like the preservation of institutional knowledge is a really important driver. And again, I say this to all the law firms around, right? I mean, you've got that, and you have your knowledge systems, and you have a level of continuity from partner to associate, and so on and so forth. But it can be really tough in a corporation if someone who's been responsible for an area for years, has all of that background. And look, anecdotally, I'll say, several decades ago, when I was in-house at a place called Canadian Pacific Limited, I was negotiating my first agreement, and my GC said to me, we have never given up on this point since we were founded in 1881, and you are not going to be the one that does it first. And that's institutional knowledge, right? And I guarantee you there is no DM system at CP in 1882 making sure that was carried forward. So I want to come back to this because I think it's really interesting, the challenges that you're facing, and frankly, we talked a lot about document management in the context of what's happening at Chevron. And the law firm DM is often seen as infrastructure and a feeder for other systems, right? But we forget sometimes that not everybody, if it's not being used, it is exponentially harder to be able to capture that. But you said you're at a different point at JPMorgan Chase, right? You've had the document management system for years. Knowledge management is a strategic priority of the department. So what do your priorities look like? How embedded are you within the department. When Dustin and Manoj, look at you and think, wow, is this what we can look for 10 years from now, right? What's that look like?
Well, I mean, I had the good fortune of managing the legal onboarding team. And so I've used the knowledge management program to ensure that we decrease ramp up time. At our firm, you have over 30 or so legal and firm-wide applications that you need to learn immediately, right away. You have a huge swath of compliance trainings to complete, and so as well. So what we've done, along with maintaining the institutional knowledge, is also ensure that we plug it into our onboarding or new joiner program as well,
Right.
so that we can decrease the ramp up time. And then from a business development standpoint, we've completed a number of transactions recently in the market. The most recent, most widely known as First Republic Bank, acquisition of that bank, and similarly, we've built out document sets to make sure that we can benchmark those transactions over time. I don't know, Leslie, if you want to add anything.
I was thinking too, when you talked about priorities, I think for sure one of the things are we very much partner with our teams. And so we find that's one of the successes, is that they really see us sort of entrenched with them. And so I think the presentation before was so appropriate. One of the things we're finding, though, as far as priority, as we talk about, again, across the legal department, and we talk about knowledge, we think about, you were saying, what is knowledge? And so we started out with this approach that, we want to have knowledge accessible to everyone across the legal department. And as we started to talk to groups, we realized that groups themselves were more concerned about what is our knowledge among our group and how can we find it and how can we organize it so it's of greater value to us. So it was sort of taking a little turn to recognize, let's focus on the group finding their knowledge first, and then, we were talking about this yesterday, and then really sort of creating this roadmap for the entire organization so they understand where the knowledge is. But teams have a greater need, I find, to figure out where their knowledge is and how they best use it.
And then lastly, I'll add, so we use it contemporaneously as well, not only for institutional knowledge. So when the new administration was inaugurated, and we were working overnight to ensure that we had a place that was segmented off in our knowledge management product for all of the executive orders that were signed, and we had dozens of working groups that were spun up overnight. We needed to understand how did the executive orders impact our clients and our businesses. So we use it from an institutional knowledge standpoint as well as from a contemporaneous standpoint as well.
And so I just wanted to ask, that's clearly I'm sure everybody's sitting there going, gosh, I really wish I had access to that information. And this is something we've talked about, which is also how you can work closer to law firms. But when we think about those knowledge exchanges and the cultural piece, Dustin and Manoj, I think that you said that you started implementing your KM technologies during the pandemic, when I guess people were not in the office regularly, and then people begin to come back. And I wonder if you can tell a little bit about that human journey of having people back, what that's meant to the person to person knowledge exchange, how that's building on what you knew you were establishing as technology first, but then focusing on adoption second.
Yeah, well, the first thing we learned right away was that we needed that in-person element because we didn't have the adoption. So that first year of everything being virtual, we came in, we said, We have a new document management system. It's the system of record. Even that phrase didn't really mean anything to anyone in corporate law, because the system of record for the business is very different than where knowledge lives in the law function. So we sort of said, this is the new system of record. Take everything out of your OneDrive and import it into the DMS, and we thought that was all we needed to say. And working at a company or a corporation, I was naive to believe, top down, the boss says do this, employees do this. I knew that wasn't the case in law firms, but I thought there was a reason for that. But in a company, boy, the boss says to do it, you just do it. Wasn't the case at all. So it took us really about a year to realize that this was not working. And thankfully by that point we were coming back into the office and realized we had to completely change our approach. So that's when we literally started to go down to the individual level, because the initial guidance just wasn't followed and wasn't there.
And so again, just to situate it, a part of it is, I think this is a contrast that's worth drawing out. When a law firm, so I'm looking honestly at some of the people in the audience with whom I've worked on projects like this, right? And you have that conversation, which is, are we going to shut down the shared drives? Are we going to force the safes, right? And you might think, oh, but we compromise here and we compromise there. But you're not in a massive global corporation with a global IT function where you had that conversation, right, about replacing the save button for DM?
Completely shut down, of course. Even worse, I mean, and I would imagine this is for most corporate law departments. Obviously, our clients are the business, and we do have a shared system called SharePoint and OneDrive that we can very easily share and collaborate with the business. So we're up against that every day. We're trying to get them to use the law function system, but they all know, and we all know, you can share and collaborate much easier with the system that the enterprise uses. So that's our daily struggle.
Joshua, I'll just add, to your question about the in-person versus, the pandemic era. We're strong believers in meeting in person. We've seen the difference when we get people in the room and we get a totally different conversation. But I don't know if it's the distractions, I don't know what it is, but we get people in the room and we're the facilitators, but it's such a joy when the actual team starts to have the conversation amongst each other and goes, well, why are you saving it there, and why are we saving it this way? This is why I do it. And then there's this consensus that's built in person, and that's sort of true knowledge management, right? Where everybody sort of agrees, okay, this is how we're going to do it, and generally we agree this is knowledge, right? And let's move forward in that manner.
So do they generally agree that the silos ought to come down? Like, I'm always curious because you've been in meetings where people go, yes, we're very collaborative, and that's total bullshit, right? They don't want to change how they work. But when they're saying, I agree with you, when they're saying in the groups and you hear, hey, Mary's doing this, that sounds really smart. Why did I never think about that? Oh, I had no idea you had these precedents. No idea. No way to access them. You've got them in Outlook folder? How much? So are they? Is that a part of sort of that ground up? Hey guys, we the clients actually would like to break these silos, and we would like your help. And is that what's helping to drive this, in addition to, say, the other top level goals like preserving institutional knowledge and tracking people as they leave and those other objectives?
I think that's a huge part of it. I don't know, I think it was recently I read a survey that said we spend about a full day a week searching for information. And when we don't find it, what do? Recreate, reinvent, pay somebody else to do it. So is the knowledge there? Yes. It's probably siloed in somebody's Outlook or OneDrive and locked away, right? And when we see those silos come down, that's where we really see the culture change. Recognition in the most organic form happens, which from a peer-to-peer perspective, that changes the game. We're trying to answer a regulatory question and somebody finds that information in the knowledge management system and saves the day by saving the company some money, there you go. That's a game changer, right?
Right.
And that was previously siloed away in somebody's outlook. And so those moments, those anecdotal moments are huge in sort of moving the ship forward.
I mean, that's another good point, because that's not an ROI that necessarily
Yeah.
flips over the law firms, right? Which is, if I do this right, I'm going to save us money. The law firms here are going, no, no, it's okay. Hire us. We'll reinvent the wheel for you. Come on, seriously, you all know that. Yeah. Yes.
I have a question. Jennifer King from Greenberg Traurig. With the initiatives that you're discussing, I wonder how they have translated with your interactions with outside counsel.
Okay, so Jennifer's question, just so everybody heard that, is with the initiatives that are being discussed, how does that translate in working with outside counsel?
Yeah, Jennifer, for us, we have an initiative where we actually store some of our exemplar briefs and documents in our knowledge management platform, and so the expectation is that outside counsel should hit the ground running, knowing what the highest and best work product is for the firm. So you should be further ahead, or making sure that you fully leverage the knowledge. We anonymize some of the work that's been created from our partner firms, but we expect you to hit the ground running and be further along than creating something from the ground up, work product from the ground up.
And I think also it may not be the answer that our outside counsel likes to hear, but with that access to knowledge internally, right, we measure the success of that by we need outside counsel less, right? So if we really can organize the information and the legal advice and opinions we've already gotten, rather than, to your point, reinventing it and needing to go back out to outside counsel, that's one of the measures of success for us, right? That we can actually access that information again internally.
And I just want to say, this is, when we were preparing for this, we obviously did not know the details of what the keynote was going to cover today. But we did talk about things that fall under this topic of client centricity. And one of them was, are you working with any of the KM departments of your firms to make yourselves better? And I want to tie that together to the keynote, because remember, the keynote was like, what do you, it was the Princess Bride reference. What was that line again?
As you wish.
As you wish, right? And but what Michelle said was, it's not what you think they need, right? It's what they actually need. And I think it's really interesting when you think about the building a quality relationship that goes beyond performing great legal work. All of your firms perform great legal work. That's frankly why you deal in fungible assets that can get you into these price competitive situations with your clients. However, we're all here because we want takeaways to bring back. And I would suggest, and I'd love to get our panel's thoughts on this, that cooperating, collaborating, helping to create that knowledge management back and forth between a service provider and a client to share best practices. They don't have the resources you have. You all think you don't have enough money, resources, and projects, except for a couple of you who I know are overworked and overtired. But that would be paradise for many of your clients. I'm just curious, where you think there's opportunity in collaborating with your colleagues, with knowledge management peers on the other side of the client firm equation.
Yeah, I'll start by saying that we have a program in our legal department, in our KM program, where we partner with over 100 law firms that send us general opinions that they may have with what's happening across the legal landscape. What we'd like to do going forward is if law firms would identify certain expertise that they have and be very targeted with how what's happening in the market is impacting our firm. Whether it's an example of that would be whether it's related to auto leasing or home lending or credit products, new fintech products that are out. We have practice groups within JP Morgan, within our legal department that are specialized in that area. And so we'd love to hear from targeted, curated information that comes from the firm that goes directly to those practice groups. And so it's a great opportunity for, to build a relationship with JP Morgan Chase if you're on the firm side. And for us, we get to grow our internal knowledge program. So I don't know, Leslie, if you want to add anything or Manoj.
You said it wonderfully.
Yeah, I think if we look at our client is the law function of Chevron. The Chevron law function's client is the business. That's how we sort of look at how we're supporting and who we're supporting, and I honestly haven't thought as much about how we can leverage knowledge from outside of even the Chevron world, probably because we've realized it's a monumental task just to contain the knowledge that we have, let alone somebody else's. But it's intriguing, and I think there's opportunity there. And I would go back to one of our mindsets. Obviously, is one of our stated goals is to use outside counsel less. Right? If we have the knowledge internally, we use it less. So we have to get sort of beyond that thinking first, and then I think there's an opportunity there.
I have a question. I just want to go back to adoption for a second because there's something that was nagging at me. I have this in my head. I have this kind of fantasy idea of what a giant corporate function and their, C-levels and directors and all these professionals. Have you got change management professionals within your corporate entities themselves? They might not be specific to the law department, but is that something that you get to tap and get access to, or is it really? Are you really very much depending on this approach, which I think is the perfect approach, right? Person to person, group to group, ultimately up to management. So is there a mix? Is that available to you?
Yeah, it's both. For us, we've built out a change management function over the last 3 years in the legal department. Leslie does her fair share of pounding the pavement every single day. I'm always on top of her, asking her where we are. And then we have operational governance with all of our practice groups. So we meet with them monthly, in a more formal setting, and then we meet with the larger lines of businesses individually, and then lastly we leverage our status as a strategic priority. So if we can speak at a town hall or take advantage of any communications from general counsel, we do that as well. So it's a holistic marketing campaign at adoption for us.
I would say, sorry.
Sorry. I was just going to add to Jamal's. We realize how, I want to say, special and lucky we are to have created this change management team. And I know change management is such a big word, like what does that even mean? But it was interesting. We had the head of that team speak at an offsite a couple of weeks ago, and we were looking to partner her up with someone else in the global organization. It was really hard to find that. So I think that's such an interesting point, right? Change management is so important, whatever that means, right? I think in our respective organizations, but we're really, really lucky that that point was really driven home enough that they saw the need to really create an entity to help us with that. Sorry, Dustin.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Dustin.
I was, from a Chevron standpoint, I would say for change management, normally, we just went through a major reorganization, came from the enterprise. Right. And what that happened first, and then the law function followed that lead and changed it, and that's still ongoing. That probably happened about 6 months ago, and we're just today, we're still seeing the effects of it as we do it. So probably a little bit different in that, the major changes come from the enterprise, our customers, and we adapt.
And we do have a change management role within the law function. And I find change management sort of interesting because we traditionally think of it in sort of the IT sense. We're changing
Right.
technology. Change management is crucial, but what's interesting about knowledge management is it's more than the tech. It's sort of this cultural change that's needed to prioritize knowledge, and so everybody's sort of focused on that. And we've got a small team of 4 people that prioritizes knowledge management for about 700 folks. So the key to really moving this forward is constantly having these conversations with the 700 people. And that's hard to do when you've got a team of 4 and having to constantly make that a priority. So we set up a team of knowledge management leads. These are attorneys, paralegals, others that represent each law group. And they're sort of our arms and legs within those groups. And we really depend on them to tell us if people are having trouble finding things or if they are finding things. What else can be done different within that team to make knowledge management a priority? So in sort of a constrained budget, quote unquote, way, we've stood up this KM lead community, and they've really taken the accountability and ownership. We've added the word lead in that role so that they feel the accountability.
Right.
And that's been helpful and paid dividends for us.
To Manoj's point, similarly, we have champions, and so with our change management team, if we roll out a new feature, we have a new communication that's developed, or if there's a new program initiative, as we mentioned earlier, it's contemporaneous projects that are going on. We connect those communications with our in the Chevron instance, the leads, but we have champions internally, so we sort of work to make sure that we continue the circle of adoption of marketing push across all of our practice groups in that way.
I think that's a great point, Manoj, about using the titles, right, and giving people recognition. Because again, just to make sure everybody heard, he used the words, "We are resource constrained and we're cost constrained," right? I mean, it's because you think, oh well, I'm filling up with gas. They're or God knows, J.P. Morgan. Everybody, roll your eyes with me at once. They have no money. Poor J.P. Morgan. So
It's tough. It's tough on the inside. It's tough on the inside. Don't believe what you hear.
but like all of us, right? A law department's a cost center. The knowledge team is a non-billable group within a cost center. And it's really interesting how you've been building that up from the ground up and using, really, I would say, sort of including people through inclusion, expanding the reach and the value of the department. I think that's a really sound and innovative approach, because we think innovation is AI, right? And here innovation is them, right?
Yeah.
It's the people.
Yeah, it's really their program.
Yeah.
It's really they to our first speaker's point, this program is for them. It's to make sure that they add value as advisors to their clients, and that's what I think Manoj and Dustin and Leslie and I are saying.
Super. Now, guys, you may not see it, but there's a clock in front of us that says 2 minutes and 17 seconds. So, in the 2 minutes left, did anyone else have a question for the panel? I don't want to shortchange anybody in the audience. I'm doing my best to sort of pivot and make sure everybody's okay. Yeah, Ali. Here, let me pass this over to you.
Is there an innovation function within the KM team that kind of is distinct from the KM function, and how? And if there is one, if you can explain what.
Yeah, so we have. My expectation is that everybody innovates, and so I've hired individuals with data science backgrounds on a team. We have Leslie, who's a former product owner. Last year we were fortunate enough to launch 7 or 8 AI solutions that are integrated into our KM program. So the expectation is that holistically, I expect everybody to think innovatively, and then we partner with our chief data officer and our machine learning center of excellence at the firm to execute design, execute, and implement solutions that we think will be helpful to the program.
We partner with our Law Digital Platform colleagues. They are our tech arm of the law function. We sort of sit in a unique position just because their true wish is that they could meet with every single person to figure out how to unlock the innovative needs, right? So we partner closely with them, and we have these conversations all day long and are able to share sort of the wish list and start to experiment with various solutions that would move innovation forward for us. Yeah.
Super. Ali, thank you for the question.
Thanks, Al.
Everybody, we're at time. I want to say a huge thank you to Jamal and Leslie and Dustin and Manoj for this terrific conversation. Thank you for sharing and letting us see what life is like on your side.